All right, recording now.
You're good? Yeah. I'm just going to start introducing them. Yep.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to start off our second pair of presentation. And yeah, they're going to just continue on the same topic, just present a little bit more in depth on one of them.
Yeah.
So here's Sergei and Vadim.
How's it going, guys? I'm Vadim, just to be clear. I'm Sergei. So yeah, just to clear the air, we are brothers, we are twins, and we do happen to be identical twins as well, even though we look pretty different.
The first three questions.
Yeah. So, we're in a room full of obviously pretty intelligent people, a lot of engineers. You guys are working on innovative things, hopefully working for cool companies, on exciting stuff. What can you possibly have to do with this guy on the screen here? Well, it turns out that we can actually learn a lot from prehistoric humans and human evolution as to how we work together, both engineers and business people alike. And just to give you a little bit of context, you know, in our lives we've been sales guys, both consumer marketing for consumer products and sales for small B2B companies, enterprise products. We've held product management and project management roles as well, so we kind of understand both sides. And while we are not engineers ourselves, we've taken C++ and Java, and we know a little bit of it. And we do have 3 older brothers that are engineers, so just
We know how much it sucks to miss a semicolon. The last comment.
Exactly. So, so what do we have to do with this guy? Well, if we think about prehistoric humans and sort of what the needs were back then, there were really 2. It was how am I going to get my next meal, and when am I going to get laid? Not much has changed, of course, but you know, as we sort of started to evolve, really that big need of finding food was a difficult problem to solve, because a lot of times we're in the woods. There's a lot of animals out there that are trying to kill us, and sometimes the game out there is huge, and you really can't go at it alone. So humans pretty early on realized that, you know, in order to get food consistently, first of all, it makes a lot more sense to get bigger game and just to hunt all at once. But also, a lot of times you need to have a friend with you, a buddy that's helping you out. I'm not sure at what point humans hunted dinosaurs, but I think you guys get the point. Huge animal, you do need more than one person to solve this particular problem, in this case, getting food. And also, if you remember high school, when we were asked to partner up with somebody, how many of you guys were like, you know, what if I'm left alone? What if I can't find a partner? Well, they were actually preparing us for the real world, which is, you know, when you get out there in the real world, there are big problems you have to solve, and you're probably not going to be able to do yourself. And so that's why we were put in that uncomfortable situation, even from the time that we were in high school. But humans didn't come up with this idea of teamwork. You actually think of the animal kingdom, it happens all the time. And a good example is our friend the meerkat. These guys look like buddies. They look like they're having a good time. Well, meerkats, they actually look out for each other all the time. As a matter of fact, while this looks like a cute family, what they're doing is they're looking out. And you notice meerkats, they always stand up. Well, they're actually keeping guard for their home and for the food and for their family. And so they take turns keeping guard for the whole family, because they know it's for the well-being of the whole family.
So we did start to evolve a little bit from simply the hunter-gatherer, you know, guy and maybe some girl that he found living in a cave together, to go into kind of slightly bigger groups, right? And they were known as tribes. They still exist some places in the world today, but they were more effective because they could work together. Back then, they were more based on family. So the idea was you could really only trust your family to not stab you in the back. And so they kind of kept it really closed. And so the groups didn't really get much bigger than tribes. But even with these tribes, it spawned a lot of innovation. For example, this is an early prehistoric motorcycle gang. These guys look really intimidating, but they're sweethearts. They do a lot of volunteering on the side. But the point is, it did spawn some innovation, and it did work. You know, they created weapons. They were able to hunt more effectively. And then, sometime around 12,000 years ago, there was something known as the Neolithic Revolution, right? So this was the time when farming was pretty much discovered. And people started to, for the first time, gather in more dense populations around one area. This is kind of the early version of what you see here of what a city might have looked like 12,000 years ago. Or early version of a city, because people knew that they could live on this one land, they can maintain this land together, and they could all feed each other all the time. It was much better than having to go hunt. So That was the first kind of city, and then it eventually evolved into what we know as cities today. And what you guys are looking at here, it's a map of venture capital deals by metropolitan, right? And so VCs, they're really good at finding where the innovation is. That's what they get paid to do. And so, as you can see, I mean, New York, Boston, San Francisco, LA, San Diego, these are apparently where these are the epicenters of innovation. And why is that? Well, in most part, it's because there's a lot of people there. It's a pretty simple answer. If there's more people, there's more of a chance of innovation happening. And so there's actually a really interesting book I recommend for everybody to read. It's by Stephen Johnson. It's called Where Good Ideas Come From. And he talks about how ideas are developed, and he actually draws a lot of interesting parallels between ideation and biology and evolution. And he talks about evolution, how, you know, I'm not a biologist, so I'm going to paraphrase really poorly here. Hopefully there's no scientists in the room that can like call me out. But basically you have, you know, protons, neutrons trying to enter cells, and then there's molecules that are bonding together that have never bonded together before. And when you have, it's something called the adjacent possible in biology, and we can apply it to innovation as well. And the adjacent possible is when there were two molecules that have never bonded before, never combined before, now that they have, this reaction can cause something new and open up a possibility of some new organism or something new to be developed, and eventually humans came about. And ideas work in a very similar way, according to Stephen Johnson. He said that when you have a lot of people in the same room or in the same area with a lot of different backgrounds and experiences that are open and communicating and sharing ideas, these ideas kind of tend to take on a life of their own and morph. And then that's really how innovation becomes possible, because a lot of people are giving their input. So when you have people with ideas that weren't able to combine before, it gives rise to some new interesting other ideas.
So if you kind of take a look at what we just talked about, right? Human evolution, understanding that it's better to work in teams, and that we can accomplish more as a team, you actually start to see a parallel between how smaller communities evolve into bigger communities, into societies, into metropolises. And you'll start seeing a parallel as to how technology companies in particular, which is probably what most of us work for, how they get built and how they grow. So normally you start with two guys in a garage, Sergei and
one of those guys is a great name, by the way.
His name is Sergei, so clearly this picture was staged and they must have had millions of funding there, but you do start with two guys in a room working on interesting ideas, trying to find customers where the problem that they're solving is big enough where they're willing to pay for that idea, and eventually get to a point where two guys is enough. And you need to get more smart minds into the office. And there was actually another office mentioned earlier, so we are big office fans. But the idea is you do have to have more of these people in the same room, again, so that ideas collide, so that innovation can actually happen, because everybody has a very different perspective. And when you put different perspectives into a room, a lot of great stuff can happen. And you do need both business people and engineers people to accomplish that. So as companies get bigger, they start to invest money and resources into their talent because they want to retain that talent. Some organizations even go as far as to build campuses, full campuses for their employees to harvest that innovation, to create an environment where they can come to work every day, not worry about anything at all. I mean, there's a bus that takes them to work. They can go play basketball during lunch if they want. The food and drinks is provided. Not worry about anything at all except coming together and solving interesting problems and complicated problems.
So go to this one. So there was actually, to go along with what Vadim was saying, there was an interesting study done by Glassdoor.com. You guys probably heard of it. It's a site where you can review any company that you ever worked for. And it was top 50 companies to work for. Obviously, this is based on real data. It's based completely on reviews, not just surveys or anything, so you can pretty much trust what they said. And interestingly enough, out of the top 50, 22, so almost half, were tech companies, technology companies. And the majority of those were actually enterprise software businesses. So you don't really have to be a sexy consumer company to be considered one of the best places to work. And I'll tell you what some of the reviews were. One, for example, for Zappos, it's all, if you guys have ever read Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos, you understand how focused they are around their customers. It's almost ridiculous. You can actually call any one of their customer service agents and ask them like where there's a good bar somewhere like in Vegas in the Strip, and they'll tell you. They'll like research it for you and they'll tell you. There was one guy, I think, who spent 10 hours on the phone on a customer call once there. So they're very customer-centric, and that's what people perceive that as a very positive environment. They want to work there. LinkedIn is actually similar. People talk about how they love the fact that they're very focused about educating professionals. They love to come to work every day because of that. At eBay, they say, you know what, people are so approachable, they communicate so easily, they're always willing to help out. That's why I love working there. Intuit actually also had the same thing. They made the list. It was about communication. So you notice these two overarching ideals, overarching themes, what made these companies get into the top 50 companies to work for. It was the people being communicative, open. And as a matter of fact, I really think, there's been some studies around this, I really think that the modern definition of what an employee is today, they need to fit that. They need to be open and communicative. They need to be helping everybody in the company or helping each other. They can't be closed in their own little cave. Eventually, people that are like that, I think they're going to be phased out. They need to be almost like entrepreneurs within an organization. So it's people, and then the other one is purpose, right? The customer. Why are we all here? Why are we working on this business? Why do we come into work every day? Well, it's to create a product that customers love. So these companies that people love working for, they had a very good idea of what their purpose is, because leadership made it a point to always kind of be showing people, their employees, and kind of beating it into them that this is what the purpose is, this is our mission, and this is what we're working for. And so the next kind of the rest of the conversation, the presentation, we want to focus on this purpose set because we think it's really crucial.
So you do start seeing that companies that really knock it out of the park in terms of being successful, they care about their people, but they're really good about defining the why. So if you
I think Vadim chose this picture. It's like one of the creepiest I've ever seen. They had the actors brush their teeth for like 15 minutes.
they say if you look at somebody smiling, you're going to smile too, so I want you guys to have a little bit of a smile. No, but if you think about meerkats and prehistoric humans, their needs are really easy, right? We need to get food, we need to stay alive. Us humans, we have much more complicated problems to worry about. And so that's why we need to define purpose to tackle these problems. But some of you guys are sitting here and you're probably thinking, well, you know, I actually work for a pretty good company, and they do a good job of communicating the why and explaining to us that we're a customer-centric focus. As a matter of fact, you know, we always tell our employees to keep the customer in mind. We always tell our employees to keep the customer in mind. Let's take a step back and pay attention to what I just said. Tell our employees. Most of you guys probably interacted with children before, right? In the past, you either have your own kids or you have a nephew or cousin or something like that. Well, when you tell a child what to do, we'll take that example and we'll go from there. When you tell a child what to do, most of the time, the reaction is going to be something like this. Right? I don't care if she's my mother. It's nap time when I say it's nap time. I know it's soccer.
Does everybody know Business Baby?
Yes.
All right. Glad we're not the only ones here.
So, you know, what if the mother took a different approach in this case? Instead of telling her child to go take a nap, she said, "Well, look, Bobby, it's fine. You don't have to go take a nap. You have a play date with Jimmy later today, and you're gonna be way too tired to go out. So, totally understandable. You just have to go to bed early. But yeah, no need to take a nap." Well, if you gave Bobby purpose, he wants to go on that play date, so he's gonna run to bed just so he can wake up as fast as possible to go play with Jimmy. So, if a child needs that kind of purpose to act on something, don't you think that your employees deserve that purpose when they're working on complicated problems on a daily basis? So I have a little story for you guys. I was working with a company, and I was a product manager there. And the company was actually taking on a lot of new customers, and so the developers were really busy, right? They were constantly working on the new bugs that were coming up on a daily basis, and also trying to chip away at the product roadmap because all these new customers had new requests as well. And you know, they were pretty resistant to new projects that were put on their plate, which is understandable. I'm sure you guys have felt that before, if you're an engineer especially. And even if those projects came from the CEO, they were still resistant. And so the CEO came to me, because I'm a product manager, right? It's my job to move product initiatives along. And he came to me and he said, "Vadim, the engineers either don't do what I say when I tell them, when I assign a project to them, or they work very, very slowly on it. Why is that the case?" Well, I said, "Well, what are you asking them? Like, what's the big project you're thinking about right now? What did you ask them?" He said, "Well, we need to redo the whole website." From an engineer's perspective, even though I'm not an engineer, I thought to myself, are you kidding me? redoing the whole website. Well, that's going to take probably several weeks of planning and design. How we're going to design the site. What pages do we have to get rid of? What pages do we add? How do we fix the hooks that are currently going into our database? And how are we going to get the data in the right place at the right time? And how is it going to affect the customer-facing side of things, right? All these things are going through my mind. It's at least a 2-month project. You guys are really busy. Do you really need to redo the whole website? So I didn't say that specifically to him, but I said, well, what's the purpose? Why are you looking to redo the whole website? Well, he said, it's actually pretty simple. I need to make some changes to the site, and I have to go to developers every time I need to make a change. And also we need to freshen up some of the language because we have a lot of new customers, and a lot of times they buy a product, but they don't really understand what they're buying. And that can obviously cause problems, right? If your customers are buying product and then they're confused afterwards. And so then I understood that he didn't necessarily have to redo the whole website. So I went back to my desk, and I sort of thought through the project scope myself, and I realized, we can actually take the existing site, have the business side come up with a new copy. So again, technology is not doing anything there. We can copy over almost every single page and just freshen up the styling and the design. And so I went to my engineering team and I said, guys, I know that you were asked to build a whole new website, but actually it's much simpler than that. We can retain most of the assets on the site. We just need a new style, which you guys are designers, you can come up with fairly quickly. And also, we need to update the language on the site, which is going to be done on the business side because people are not understanding our product, and we really think that we can decrease the amount of tickets and the amount of issues and support tickets that you get. Well, the engineers were ecstatic about that. First of all, it went from being a 2-month project, scoped down to a 2 or 3 week project. And second of all, it meant that when the project is complete, there's going to be less support tickets coming in. It made a lot more sense. And they also understood that they're doing this for the customer, so the customer has a better idea of what's going on as well. So I provided them with the why, which incentivized them to complete the project.
And not only did you provide them with the why, he also, probably without knowing it, got that why from the CEO, right? He asked them the question. It was a pretty simple thing to do. He wasn't trying to challenge him. He was just trying to say, what are we trying to get done? Why are we doing this? And it uncovered itself completely. So it shows how important it is. So to be a good leader, we're starting to understand that it's crucial to always reiterate the why for your employees, right? And I'll give you guys an example of how this happened that was really good. One thing that I always say, this kind of goes a little bit against what Milan said about everybody meeting at one time, but I think it's actually a good idea to have all staff meetings if your company is small enough. If your company is really big, maybe you can break it down by geography or do it through webcam. That was a good suggestion. But I think it's great to have all staff meetings because it's a way for people to kind of get to know what everybody's up to, right? It just needs to be led in an effective way. So I'll give you an example of how this was led effectively. So one company that I was working with, we had an all staff. It was actually a pretty negative topic. One of our engineers who had been with us for a long time, he decided to leave. It was his last week there. He kind of just told us then, and the meeting was to basically make everybody aware so we could plan accordingly. Well, it was kind of a somber meeting for about the first 10 minutes. But one of the VPs that was there, he took it upon himself to change the mood, and he did this by introducing the why. Why are we all here? This guy's leaving. Why do we still stay here? And he did a smart thing. He took one example of one prospect that we were working with. It was a company that was doing a proof of concept with us, and he started publicly recognizing all the teams that were involved in that, saying, this company, if we close this deal, if the proof of concept goes well, this is going to be millions of dollars additional revenue for us. Our valuation is going to skyrocket, right? All of our stock that we all own is going to go up really high. And they're going to be a great customer to have on our marketing site and everything. Our developers, you guys have been really working on the custom development projects they gave you, so responsive. Our sales guys, you guys have been pushing them to sign the contract, pushing them to actually commit revenue to it. So he publicly recognized each individual person that he could that was related to it, and each team right then and there. And he reiterated that why are we doing this? Because we can get awesome customers and solve awesome problems, right? And we're all doing this together. So he took something that was a negative and he turned it into, I think the sentiment after the meeting was quite positive, that people still had faith in the company. And he did that by again, reiterating the why. So it's really important.
Some of you guys also might be thinking, okay, well, our organization, we set the vision, we do a pretty good job with that. We have these meetings, and I think that we are pretty clear in telling our employees that they should be customer-centric focused. But there's still some friction between engineering teams and some business teams. There's still some kind of a disconnect, and this is the example in this case. So, our sales teams, they understand the product pretty well, but they're frustrated that the new features aren't being built as fast as they want them to. On the same side, the engineers, they're making a lot of headway on the roadmap, but why in the hell are the sales guys not closing those big deals? Because our product is market-leading technology. Why aren't they closing all these deals that they're promising? And so, the question then becomes, how do we get these people on the same page? How do we get them all to understand each other and really know what the other person's doing? And that is a difficulty, but fortunately there are a couple of things that you can actually do, and well, a bunch of things, but we'll outline a few, to help your employees understand each other when they're in completely separate roles. One of those changes is actually a physical change within your office, and the other one is more process-oriented. So we'll start with the physical.
A lot of us, this is probably somewhat of a familiar picture, right? It's almost been like a movement to have an open office environment. No walls, if we do have walls, they're made out of glass so that you can see what's going on. Apparently, the most productive way to work is if you're hovering over somebody the whole time.
We're not promoting micromanagement, by the way.
Yeah. Some companies take it to extremes. And, I think that a lot of us have felt like this guy before in some situations. So, you don't have to have you don't have to go crazy with having everybody in the same room typing next to each other. But the point is here, we want to, in a physical way, as Vadim mentioned, expose people to the work that others do. And that just means, don't have your sales guys on one floor and your developers in a cave somewhere where they never interact, right? You want to have them at least somehow physically able to interact with each other. I think you told me a couple days ago about an interesting example.
Yeah, so I read an article about a company called HubSpot. You guys probably have heard of them, maybe use their products. And up until they had 200 employees, and they still do a variation of this, but up until they had 200 employees, every quarter, they literally made people pick a name out of a hat, and that's how they decided who sat next to who. Not like sectioned off into departments, completely random. And the theory behind that was the people that you sit next to immediately, you're just going to have a different relationship with them by default than the rest of the organization. I mean, you spend 40, 50, 60 hours a week with them. You might ask them more questions in general just because of that proximity. And so there is a lot of benefit to moving seats around and giving people exposure to other people in the organization. They will learn a lot from each other. But we do work in different startups here in New York or even bigger companies. I'm sure some of you guys have open office environments already as well. And then the question becomes, during the day, you might be thinking, all right, what the hell does John do all day? Or Mike? Or Steve? What the hell do they do all day? How many of you guys ever sat in a room and thought, no idea what this guy does? Okay. So it turns out there's actually a lot we can do to improve that. We're not just showing you guys this because it was a great movie, but you have an example of the training place.
Yeah. It can work really effectively, and actually Milan mentioned this, where sometimes you can have business people take the load right off of the developers sometimes. I was working for a company once where we had a very technical product. That's why we hired cats to do our support now. The product was so technical. It was a product for developers and for IT people, and so a lot of the support that was done, pretty much all of it, was done by engineers as well. What they found out, though, is for people that are going through like a free trial or using the product for free, or even just getting exposed to the product in the first couple of weeks of using it, there's a lot of the same questions that start creeping up. And so why not train one of our marketing guys to take the load off of the developers a little bit? And it was pretty quick. I mean, the guy already knew the product decently well, but they trained him up, and he would just sit on the live chat, basically, and answer questions. And it had actually a tremendous impact on the organization. And I'll tell you why. Because, first of all, marketing and sales typically, I hope in most companies, works very closely together, right? They're very tied to each other. And so now that this guy got a better understanding of the product, he was able to communicate that understanding to the sales team as well. So the sales team got a better understanding through him. But not only that, but he was able, because he thought of it from a business perspective, from a user perspective, he was able to notice that in the first week or so, on average, there was a pretty high drop-off of people from the trial. And he started to investigate further, because he was not a developer, he wasn't busy all the time coding, he had time to investigate. So he investigated further, why is this the case? And he noticed that, it's actually this part of the product that's supposed to load something automatically so that people know that it's there. It's not, the UI is just not really showing it, so people don't see that it's there, or they don't understand it easily. And so it was a very simple UI fix. He noticed that it got fixed, and it improved our conversions by a lot. So getting people to join and do things that typically maybe somebody else in the organization does can actually be very valuable.
And we are going to wrap things up. I guess we're running low on time, but there's different ways to accomplish this as well. Other companies have sales guys once a quarter. They answer all the high-level support tickets. They get some training around that. That helps as well to get more exposure to the product. But quick poll before we move on. How many of you guys are engineers again? Can you raise your hands? Software developers, you write code. Okay. How many of you guys are engineers that have either led part or led the whole sales call before? No hands. Okay. So I know engineering probably thought you guys are off the hook, but while the mentality for a lot of organizations is we can't bother our engineers, they need to be totally focused on their work, there's actually a lot of benefit in bringing your engineers into the sales process as well, even if you don't have a super technical product. Well, first of all, they're going to get exposed to the customer, and they're going to get feedback directly from the customer on the product, which can shape the roadmap. But secondly, they're going to hear all the difficult objections that the sales guys hear on a daily basis. And they might realize that sales is actually not an easy job. Coming into work every day, picking up the phone, and dialing total strangers and convincing them to spend money on this nebulous technology that's supposed to bring value isn't necessarily the easiest thing in the world. So not only can bringing an engineer on a technical call help you close more deals by adding the value immediately from the engineer's perspective and building that trust with the customer by having an expert there, it can also help them understand the salespeople a little bit better as well. And here we have Bill Gates on the phone. I'm sure he spent a lot of time on the phone. He was the CEO.
Another almost kind of, we've both been in a lot of sales roles, and the amount of leverage that you have if you can bring a technical resource on a call, I mean, you can pretty much demand that a decision maker from the company joins the call as well, because it's going to bring so much value to the conversation. It's going to be such a good use of your time that your CEO should be on this call too. And so it's valuable in more than one way. So another thing that we wanted to mention, there's another way that you can get people to communicate better, right? And some companies embrace this, some don't, but happy hour, that's a great idea. Having happy hour in your office, maybe for most of us in the companies we work for, it looks more like this. A bunch of dudes, but let's
know what he's doing with that lighter.
The other picture looks a little bit better. But I'll close you guys with this. I mean, it's a quick story. Basically, I was having a happy hour with a bunch of the developers in our company. It was basically everybody in the company that was hanging out. And I see an email come in from a prospect saying that this guy from Nike signed up. I'm like, that's awesome. Nike, this is going to be a huge revenue opportunity for us. 10 minutes later, you get a support email from him. He can't figure out, something's not loading on the site for him. Well, I could have created a ticket. It was Friday night at 7 o'clock. We all had a few shots already. I mean, I don't think anybody would really take a look at that ticket until Monday. So I was talking to the developer that was right with me there because of the happy hour, and I asked him, dude, can we just look for 5 minutes and see if it's a problem on our end, on his end? Is it something that we can fix right away? And he's like, yeah, sure. And we both walked over to his terminal. We realized that it was, in fact, an issue on our end that would potentially affect other users as well later on if it wasn't fixed. And he fixed it right there. And I replied to the guy, and he was very happy. He didn't expect to hear from me at that time. And so the main point here is, you don't have to have happy hours in your company in order to get people talking. But the biggest takeaway, I think, from this is you have to give your employees or people that you manage ownership over the work that they do. And if people have that sense of ownership, if they don't feel like they're going to be yelled at every time they make a decision, if you actually give them the ability to make decisions, I think you'll notice that people start working together more. They start communicating more. They're more cohesive. They're not in their own little islands because they're not afraid. And so that's I think, a really important thing.
Yeah, if there's one takeaway from our talk, and that's basically it for us, it's try to empower your employees and set a purpose for them to come into work every day. They're the experts. They understand. That's why you hired them. They understand the work that they're doing. Let them make those decisions. And also let them know that they're making them decisions not just for the company, but for the customer, which is what they're doing there all along. They're building the product for the customer. So we love to talk about this stuff all the time, and we'd love to talk to you guys afterwards if you want to come up. Here's our contact information too. Feel free to reach out.
And we're always working on different projects, building different things with developers. We partner with a lot of developers, so we'd love to hear about some of the stuff you guys are working on too.
Thanks a lot, guys.
So we're not going to have a break. because
Power through.
what's that?
Power through.
Yeah.
Power through.
Power through?
Keep going.
Yeah. I don't know that word. No, just kidding. But feel free to take a break if you need to, or we're just going to keep powering through.
Power through.
Yeah. And this,